Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking the Power of the Microsoft Authentication Library. First, some notes. Everyone is on mute today. The presentation is being recorded, so a replay link and a copy of the slides will be emailed after the webinar. The webinar is hosted today by BlueFletch's Patrick McGlynn. Patrick is a well-known mobility expert and manager of systems engineering here at BlueFletch. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll hand it over to Patrick.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar around MSAL, or Microsoft Authentication Library. I'm Patrick McGlynn, and today I'll give you a brief introduction, talk about some of the benefits and advantages of MSAL, show you how it works in combination with the BlueFletch launcher, and also show you how easy it is to get set up in your environment. So thanks for joining. Let's get started. So what is Microsoft Authentication Library? Well, MSAL gives you many ways to get tokens and provide authentication to different applications and websites. Instead of having to implement OAuth libraries or OIDC libraries into your applications and sites, you can implement the MSAL code and it'll handle all those libraries for you. It also will handle acquiring tokens on behalf of your application and maintain that token in a storage cache where it can be refreshed for use by all applications on the device. This really helps simplify authentication across different applications that your organization might build. But most importantly, Microsoft has integrated this MSAL with all of their native Android applications like Microsoft Teams, Outlook, Edge browser, and Office 365. This really helps simplify access and provide that single sign-on experience for shared user devices. Previously, if a user tried to add their account to a Microsoft Outlook, for example, it would actually add their account to the entire Android system and start trying to link other things like calendars and contacts. It also made it almost impossible to remove that account from the device going forward, and therefore more or less locking the device in for that user and breaking the shared user model. So with MSAL and the Azure AD shared mode, we can now provide that single sign-on to all those native apps by using the Microsoft Authenticator app as our broker to handle tokens and passing user session and user data between those apps. In addition, at the end of the session, when a user logs out, that broker will be responsible for also logging out users from all the other apps and clearing app cache. So, using Microsoft Authenticator as the broker, BlueFletch can still provide our enterprise launcher experience on devices for Android while providing the native Microsoft SSO. When a user would click login through our launcher, they'd be presented with the Authenticator app to log in. And once that user is authenticated, we can then map access to different roles and groups from Azure AD. This provides that cross-app single sign-on, device accountability, device locationing, communication tools, and all the other nice benefits of BlueFletch in addition to the single sign-on to the native Microsoft apps, which I know has been something desired from our customers for a long time. In the past, we were having to do all this on the web and weren't able to actually leverage the native applications on the device, which of course give you better functionality, tighter integration with hardware, and just a better UI and more seamless experience. So we're really glad that Microsoft has brought that tooling and functionality over to Android. So to access this, Microsoft has built their own managed home screen, they call it. This is available from the Play Store if you want to deploy it, and will allow users to log in and log out for authentication. Of course, you could also use the BlueFletch launcher as an alternative to this, which does offer a number of features over the Microsoft Manage Home screen. For example, we offer role-based experiences. If you're an associate and you log in, we can see that security group and provide apps, show and hide apps based on that group. Or if you're a manager, we can provide you elevated access to additional applications such as HR tools or device finding tools. Again, all driven from that role. We also support additional rapid login features. So that's our NFC and FIDO2 login. We're able to still use that in combination with MSAL, which again is a unique offering for us in this position. Some of the other things that I saw that BlueFletch does offer, you can't use the native app switcher when using Manage Home Screen, which is definitely quite a burden to people that are switching between apps constantly throughout the day. There's also no great logout function. With BlueFletch Launcher, when you cradle your device, we automatically log you out and clean up your data and session information. There's no reauth methods with NFC or barcodes, such as BlueFletch offers. We know a lot of customers like to tap an NFC badge on the device throughout the day to quickly unlock the device and get back in. Also, there's really not a lot of great reporting on check-in, check-out that I can find. BlueFletch has built an entire portal for reporting on this and device locationing and device accountability. However, I think you'd have to go kind of comb through Azure AD logs to see those login and logout events. So it would take a lot more to get the device accountability story up and running in your organization. Other than that, there are a few other minor things that I prefer about our launcher, but if you want to test that out later in this demo and webinar, I will show you guys how to get that implemented in your environment and set you up with a trial run yourselves. And speaking of implementation, it really is a simple 3-step process for getting Microsoft Authentication Library and Azure AD shared mode up and running in your environment. The first is going to require you to use Intune for now. So when you enroll a corporate dedicated device in Intune, you'll do that and select the Azure AD shared mode for Android. What that's going to do, it's actually going to, during enrollment, download the Microsoft Authenticator app and set it in its shared mode. As I mentioned, this becomes sort of the broker on the device for all authentication, and it is required to use all these apps in a native mode on the shared device. Other EMMs are going to support this in the future, such as SOTI and Workspace ONE, but that's probably going to be later in 2023 before we see those rolled out. So in the meantime, you can manually configure your device to be in this shared mode, but if you want to do it all automatically over the air, then Intune is going to be your best option. The second step is to deploy to set up the BlueFletch launcher in your organization's Azure AD environment. This can be done in as little as 10 minutes. We have a deployment guide where you just put in the package name and a redirect URL from us, and then we can configure the launcher to point to your Azure AD tenant. It really is a simple process. You will need administrative rights to do this, but it's really a common process you would do to onboard any application as it comes to Azure AD, OIDC, and MSAL. Lastly is going to be deploying your apps to your devices. So you'll need to deploy the Edge browser, Microsoft Teams, and Outlook if you want to see those in action, and also the BlueFletch launcher and authentication module, which can be deployed from the Google Play Store. So Again, you'll see this in a video, a quick how-to video later in this webinar, but I'll do a demo of what that UI looks like, as well as how you set up the BlueFletch launcher in your organization. I found that it takes less than 90 minutes to get a customer up and running and everything configured. So if you are interested in setting this up, please reach out to learn more. We can always set up a sandbox environment, integrate it with your Azure AD, and you're off to the races to really start testing single sign-on. So now that we've done a quick overview about MSAL and Azure AD shared mode, let's take a look at those demo videos as I mentioned. Here, a user will sign in. And once authenticated, presented with apps for their day. You'll see Microsoft Teams opens up and automatically signs the user in all the way through. The same will happen when you launch the Edge browser. And Edge will even sync bookmarks, favorites, and browsing history. My SAML token carries over, and I have SSO for my webmail. At the end of the shift, the user will log out, and BlueFletch will clean up the session data and close out all running applications, so the device is ready for the next user. You'll see the next user logs in, and will have a very similar experience, except of course, their credentials will be carried over for single sign-on. Now let's take a look at that without MSAL support. Again, a user will log in. And will attempt to open Microsoft Teams. You'll notice the user does not get automatically signed in. They must re-authenticate. Now, when the user logs out, behind the scenes, they're actually still logged into Microsoft Teams. And let's prove that now. So even though I logged in as Patrick, you'll see I'm still logged in as Tina in Microsoft Teams. This is because Android must add the account to the operating system at a device level to support native Teams However, MSAL does away with that and allows users to dynamically switch and still support native Microsoft Teams. Now that you've seen the MSAL experience with BlueFletch in action, let's take a look at how you implement that with the EMM. For this example, we'll use Intune because they make out-of-the-box support for MSAL quite easy. In fact, we can do it in 3 quick, simple steps. Let's take a look at those now. The first step for setting up MSAL with BlueFletch on your device is to get your device enrolled into an EMM such as Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager. To do that, you'll go to Devices, Android Enrollment, and select Corporate-Owned Dedicated Devices. You'll see Shared Device, and the token type must be selected as Azure AD Shared Mode. What this does is it sets up the Microsoft Authenticator app in a shared mode device to facilitate logging in and logging out. You can set an expiration token, which luckily Microsoft just extended beyond a 90-day validity period and can be set for pretty far into the future now, as far as 2 years in advance. We'll click Create, and you'll see an enrollment token gets generated that can be scanned from the factory default screen on Android. As a reminder, you can tap 7 times on that blue welcome screen to scan this QR code for enrollment. Let's add BlueFletch to your Azure AD instance. First, you'll log into Azure AD and select App Registrations. We're going to create a new registration, and we'll call it BlueFletch MSAL Test. We'll only allow accounts in this org, and then we'll click Register. First thing is we're going to set up our new endpoints. So we're going to add, under the authentication pane, the platform of Android. The package name is going to be what gets deployed from the Google Play Store. In this case, com.bluefletch.ems.emm.auth.msal. The signature hash will be confirmed by your BlueFletch contact. Once we click Configure, please note this MSAL configuration array and send that to your BlueFletch contact. The client ID and the tenant ID are especially important for us to set up MSAL. Finally, we'll go to API permissions and add a few permissions that are required. Select Add a Permission, select Microsoft Graph, Delegated Permissions, and select the first 4, Email, Offline, OpenID, and Profile. Once you add that, you should be good to go. Now that BlueFletch has been set up in your Azure AD environment, it's time to deploy the applications to your device. You'll do that by navigating to Apps, and then Android, and clicking Add. Select Manage Google Play App from the drop-down and select. While working with your BlueFletch contact, they would have shared our applications with your private Play Store, and they should be available when searching BlueFletch in double quotes to get only the applications that we publish. The 2 required for MSAL are the EMS Launcher and the EMS Auth MSAL. Make sure you select both of these apps and approve them for deployment. Then assign them to whatever test group you have set up for testing on your devices. I'd also recommend deploying the Microsoft Edge browser on your devices if you haven't already done so. Now, let's configure the launcher via the app configuration. You'll go to Apps and then App Configuration Policies and create a new app configuration policy. Select Manage Devices and input a name that will make sense to you. For example, BlueFletch MSAL Test. You'll select Android Enterprise as the platform and select fully managed, dedicated, and corporate-owned work profile only. The targeted app in this case will be the EMS launcher that you previously approved and deployed. Click Select and OK. Next, you'll go to Configuration Settings and select Enter JSON Data. Again, working with your BlueFletch contact, they'll provide you with a config URL and checksum of your launcher config to deploy to your devices. Once that's set, you can assign to your test group the same test group you assigned your applications previously. Select Next, Create, and within minutes, you should have a fully managed device ready to test BlueFletch. So now you might be ready to test out MSAL in your environment. Just one thing to keep in mind, not all Microsoft native apps on Android currently support MSAL or the shared user mode that you've seen today. At the time of this recording, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Edge, and Yammer are the only 3 applications that officially support this. Additional apps will be added soon, and some are even available in the beta and canary channels for MSAL testing. Again, it's extremely easy to get up and running with MSAL and Intune. So if you want to take a look at BlueFletch Launcher to help facilitate this shared user sign in and sign out, please reach out and we can help you get that going. We'd love to show you what we've been working on and help you support your shared user environments. So hopefully that video was informative and gives you a better idea of how everything functions on the Android device. I wanted to answer a couple questions I commonly get from the audience and from people I've talked to around MSAL. So MSAL versus legacy OIDC, what is the difference? Well, legacy OIDC is a more open standard and gives us more flexibility around how we authenticate. So that allows us to use different browsers for authentication if doing an OIDC connection. We can use Chrome, we can use BlueFletch browser, or really any other open browser out there to log a user in and capture cookies in the browser for SSO. It is a bit more of an open standard where we can control things around MFA and re-authentication and refreshing cookies. When you think about MSAL, while it is a very full-featured library, it is very much under the control of Microsoft and kept within the Authenticator sandbox. So that gives a little less flexibility around accessing tokens and cookies. While it is possible, it just means you have to build MSAL integration into your apps. However, it does provide that SSO to the native Microsoft apps, which I know can be a huge benefit. So the next question I get a lot is, do I have to use the Edge browser if I'm going to use AD shared mode with MSAL? The answer is yes. So other browsers would not be able to provide SSO to different web apps that are integrated with Azure AD if you try to use Chrome. Because Edge is integrated, once you launch Edge, the first thing it's going to do, it's going to pick up that session from Authenticator and then be able to pass that into any of your different websites and web apps. If you tried to do that in Chrome, for example, after logging in through Authenticator and BlueFletch Launcher, it would think you're basically in a new session or on a different device. So yes, you do need to adopt Edge. However, I would say the Edge experience is pretty good because it also syncs history and bookmarks. So even if you're moving from device to device and you log into Edge, you can still have the same bookmarks available to you after login. Next question we get is, can we use MSAL even though we have Okta as our identity provider? Well, you need to federate your Okta into your Azure AD, and theoretically it's possible, but Since Azure AD provides most of the same IAM and IDP features as Okta, we haven't actually seen anyone do this. This is really for those pure play Microsoft organizations that have Intune, have Azure AD, and are using the Microsoft suite of applications. The last question I get is, do I need to use Intune for MSAL? So I covered this a little bit earlier, but the answer is no. As of this recording, mid-May 2023, MSAL on Intune is the only way you can do that automatically. So Intune will configure your device for you with the Azure AD shared mode and set up everything to pass through for a single sign-on. If you're trying to use a different MDM, the issue comes with actually configuring that authenticator app to be in the shared mode. So you can't do that from Manage Google Play. The key value pairs don't actually allow you to register the app in the shared device mode currently. But I know SOTI and Workspace ONE are currently working with Microsoft to actually build in integration to be able to do that automatically during provisioning. I believe there's a compliance API they must integrate with to be able to remotely configure Microsoft Authenticator. However, if you do want to test this in the meantime, you can always just push the Microsoft Authenticator from the Play Store to your device. And when you open up that app, in the overflow menu, you'll actually be able to register the device in a shared mode. So that does require adding a service account to the device and logging in once. Obviously, it takes a lot longer to set up devices this way because it's a manual touch, but it will give you that same experience once you're done doing that and give you a good idea of how things will function in the future. I've heard that the EMMs and MDMs might require re-enrollment in the future if you want to do this automatically over the air. That seems a little hard to believe since it's really just one application, the Microsoft Authenticator app, that needs to be put into the shared mode. And then you need to put, of course, a launcher like the Manage Home Screen or BlueFletch Enterprise Launcher on top of that to facilitate everything. But yeah, I would say the short answer to that is no, you don't have to use Intune for MSAL. However, for the easiest experience, I would recommend it for now. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me. My email will be listed below. Happy to talk about this, happy to help you with your demo in your environment. And yeah, thanks for watching today, and I hope you guys have a great evening.